Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. Republicans are sounding the alarm on a controversial piece of legislation known as the Civics Secures Democracy Act, which is ostensibly designed to promote the teaching of civics in public schools. Doesn't sound so bad on the surface, right? But perhaps there is something deeper going on here. I have with me Liberty Nation's former Principal Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Comptroller Dave Patterson to discuss. And I got through that whole title without messing it up. So I expect a pat on the back from you, Dave.
Excellent work, Jeff. Happy to be with you.
Great. I'm glad that you're having on. So let's get into this. I mean, what's wrong with this legislation? I mean, what's wrong with children learning more about civics? You know that we have a very dismal understanding of how our government works, right?
Yes, and it sounds really good, as you pointed out. But then you start to dig into what is the federal government doing in the individual local schools business. What they've done is they've set up a system whereby in this particular bill, whereby they offer over 6 years, $6 billion in grants for the study of civics. And you would think, sounds good. But when you start to look at what constitutes approval for the grants, then it starts to unravel.
Gotcha. So yeah, let's get into that. I mean, what do these schools have to do in order to get these grants for teaching civics?
Well, first and foremost, the government is going to hold back money where the grant application doesn't meet their standards. And you can see that even saying that, it opens the door for all manner of mischief. And here is the real problem. Had it been under any other administration that had some level of trust from the American people, you might say, okay, I can see how this would be a good thing. But with a Biden administration that has basically walked away from any semblance of trust from the American people, we can only assume that this bill, if passed, will lead to mischief on their parts.
So in your article that you wrote for Liberty Nation, you kind of related it to the military as far as indoctrination goes. I didn't know that in military academies, they are putting a lot of this ideas inspired by critical race theory, the gender ideology and all of that. How would this relate to military personnel?
Well, it's true. I had an article a few weeks ago on why is West Point teaching divisive coursework. And the whole idea is that what's happening here is that critical race theory, by its very nature, is designed to put divisions in the race narrative and the public discussion. They talk about this notion of whiteness and white privilege between you and me as if it were something that was bad, but it's about opportunity. You know, the whole point of the founding fathers was to establish fair and equal opportunity, not equal outcomes. And so to start to suggest that in some way that the United States is systematically racist is simply not true. First of all, you'd have to ask yourself, okay, who is and who isn't part of the system? Everyone is part of the system. So you bring up a really difficult, it's an oxymoronic point of view. And but at any rate, what the point I think that you're getting at is, so why is this particular act? Why is the effort to teach civics, which is fraught with danger with this administration, a kind of a pre-indoctrination, is what I called it, pre-indoctrination,
right? So
that West Point and the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy won't have to teach CRT. They'll come pre-indoctrinated. And this is the problem. This is, in fact, a national security issue because it simply doesn't make for a good order and discipline in a military to have people who are fundamentally believe in this divisive critical race theory.
Okay, so Dave, I want to run something by you. I want to get your reaction to this. So I was reading in an article yesterday, I believe it was in the Washington Examiner, and it was talking about how recruitment levels in the military are kind of bad right now. Like the military is having a lot of trouble recruiting new recruits. I believe only the Space Force is on track to meet its goal by the end of this year. The Army is suffering the worst as far as getting new people to join up in the military. Now, there's probably a lot of different factors playing into this, but a couple of these factors was a lot of the woke indoctrination. And this is on both sides, because if you're against a lot of the wokeness, you don't want to join the military when you see the Biden administration trying to wokeify. On the other hand, if you are indoctrinated and you believe in progressive ideology, why in the world would you put on a uniform to defend a country that is at its core racist, bigoted, and oppressive? So what do you think? What do you think about that?
I think you're exactly right, Jeff. I think that is fundamental to the problem they're having with recruitment. And that is the fact that first and foremost, you have out of the chute, the Biden administration goes after white supremacists, insurrectionists. And from early 90s until 2020, you know how many insurrectionists they could point to? Less than 100. Out of 3 million people, they couldn't find any more than less than 100 over that period of time. So, but not to be deterred, they continued to point out that this is fundamentally a problem for the military. It isn't. But people listen to this and they say, why would I want to be subjected to this kind of scrutiny and the kinds of almost persistent problems that people are raising with all manner of different issues. And contrary to what this administration may want to think, the vast majority of people in the United States are not enamored with the wokeness that they have brought to Washington.
So let me ask you this, because the issue, again, neither of us would be against increasing to the teaching of civics. The studies show that the average American doesn't have any idea how our government works. I think it was 75% of Americans can't even name the 3 branches of government. But like you said, with this administration, it's hard to trust that their motive is to actually teach civics. But let's put the shoe on the other foot and say it was a Republican or a conservative in office. You would have people on the other side who would not trust that person to adequately teach civics, and maybe they would probably contend that this person would want to whitewash history. We are at a point where we can't even trust the basic goodwill of people who disagree with us. How do we solve this problem? Because if we don't solve this, then we can't deal with the civics issue, really.
I think that it's you raise a really good point, and you're exactly correct. It is we live in a morass of total distrust. So how do you start to turn that around? And I'm afraid that it's going to take a long time. It took us a long time to get here. So it's not going to be turned around overnight. And we really do have to rely on our public education to start to turn this tide in a direction of civility first and foremost, of moral tenets. And you cannot do what we're doing in our cities, inner cities, and states, and simply dismiss the notion of moral standards and not get what we've gotten.
I agree. We are in I like the way you put that, morass of total distrust. Hopefully we can dig our way out of this. It's going to take time, like you said, but here at Liberty Nation, we will continue to keep an eye on it, and we will do our part to help with the issue. But thanks for joining the program, Dave.
Thank you, Jeff. Happy to be with you.
Thank you. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to libertynation.com on your browser or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
Maybe tracking polls sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.